For years, the railgun lived in a strange realm between military prophecy and engineering torment. Admirals loved to boast about hypersonic speeds, 100-mile ranges, and kinetic impacts strong enough to mimic aerial bombs. Critics laughed just as loudly, pointing to scorched rails, power shortages, and barrels that died after only a handful of shots. And when the United States finally unplugged its railgun program in 2021, the skeptics celebrated as if the chapter were closed forever. What they didn't know was that the story had simply shifted continents. Japan quietly stepped into the void, picked up the abandoned dream, and began rebuilding it with the precision of a nation that has turned impossible engineering into a national habit. Today, Japanese progress is so surprising that the US Navy may be forced to dust off its old notes and rejoin the race it once declared unwinnable, understanding the beast behind the hype. At its core, a railgun is just two metal rails, a monstrous current, and a conductive projectile linking them together. But the simplicity is deceptive. When millions of amps surge through the rails, electromagnetic force hurls the projectile forward with violence no gunpowder system can match. Instead of burning propellant, the railgun uses raw physics to accelerate a slug to speeds that flirt with hypersonic territory. There is no smoke, no explosive material, no chemical barrel pressure, just electricity turning metal into lightning. The downside is the weapon's appetite for power, the severe heat that builds inside the rails, and the way the rails physically try to rip themselves apart every time the current flows in opposite directions. For decades, engineers could build railguns that worked once or twice, but never systems that could survive repeated firing. That single limitation threatened to bury the concept for good. America's rise, glory, and sudden retreat. The United States began railgun experiments in the 1980s, dreaming of satellites that could shoot down intercontinental missiles. By the 1990s, they were launching tungsten slugs with enough kinetic punch to tear through armored vehicles. In the 2000s, the Navy took over and fired projectiles at energy levels that would have made battleship gunners blush. From 8 megajoules to 10 megajoules and eventually a 33 megajoule record shot, the US pushed the physics as far as possible. The futuristic Zumwalt destroyers were even designed with enormous electrical reserves, specifically to host weapons like railguns and combat lasers. But the dream slowly decayed. Rails melted. Barrels cracked. Capacitors took up too much space. Ships couldn't supply the raw power needed for rapid firing. And as lasers and hypersonic missiles matured, they leapt ahead in practicality. By 2021, Pentagon patience wore thin. Funding evaporated, development stopped. The railgun returned to storage and the US walked away. Japan refuses to let the story end. Japan saw the US retreat not as a warning, but as an opening. With North Korean missiles flying overhead, Chinese warships shadowing Japanese islands, and Russian submarines prowling nearby waters, Tokyo recognized that future conflict would demand future weapons. Instead of giving up, Japan committed to a new 4-year plan. Engineers from Acquisition, Technology, and Logistics Agency, the country's Advanced Defense Research Agency, began refining American ideas, discarding their failures and introducing new techniques of their own. Early prototypes pushed 40mm rounds at speeds near 1.4 kilometers, already impressive for a nation just stepping into the electromagnetic arena. But the real breakthrough was durability. In 2023, Japanese engineers managed repeated firings at sea from the test ship JS Asuka. 2 years later, they stunned military analysts by firing 120 shots in sequence without losing velocity, something the United States never managed even after decades of investment. Through new materials, better discharge systems, and clever thermal controls, Japan solved the nightmare of rapid railwear. In the world of railgun development, that is akin to discovering fire. A secretive test and a hit that changed everything. Pictures released in mid-2025 revealed the railgun mounted on JS Asuka, surrounded by stacked containers that likely housed massive generators, cooling units, and capacitor banks. Another set of images showed a tugboat with bright target plates attached to its funnel and stern, suggesting a successful live fire strike. Japan avoided showing the exact impact site, promising to reveal more at the Defense Technology Symposium later that year. Traditionally, Japanese secrecy in defense projects signals progress, not failure. The country tests quietly and reveals results only once an achievement is undeniable. And the decision to hit a real moving target instead of a static buoy indicates confidence that Japan had moved beyond laboratory success and into battlefield-relevant territory. Preparing for deployment across the Japanese fleet, Japan doesn't intend for the railgun to remain an experimental toy. Long-term plans show renderings of the weapon mounted on advanced Maya-class destroyers, the newer 27 DDG Aegis ships, and the future 13,000-ton DDX destroyer designed specifically for next-generation weapons. Railguns on these ships would give Japan the ability to hit incoming missiles, disable hostile vessels, and attack distant threats using nothing but kinetic force. And unlike explosive ammunition, railgun rounds can be stored in enormous quantities without the risk of detonation. For a nation increasingly preparing its island defenses against China and North Korea, that is a strategic advantage of enormous value. A weapon that sends a political message. Japan does not present the railgun as a miracle cure for its defense concerns. Instead, it functions as a signal, a deliberate projection of capability. By pursuing a technology that the United States temporarily abandoned, Japan is telling Beijing that any attack will face defenses traveling faster than the speed of thought. It is reminding North Korea that its missile theatrics are losing shock value. It is showing Russia that Japan has no intention of being outpaced in technological warfare. And it is sending a subtle but unmistakable message to its allies that Japan is stepping into a new era of military self-reliance. The railgun is not just a weapon, it is a diplomatic sentence written in megawatts. Is America ready to return to the battlefield? It quit? Japan's steady march forward has placed the United States in an awkward position. The US still has the research, the prototypes, and decades of testing data. But now Japan has the momentum, the modern materials, and the operational success. In 2024, Japanese officials approached the US Navy to collaborate on the next stage of railgun development, effectively offering to merge the strengths of both nations. If Japan begins deploying railguns on its destroyers, America will face an uncomfortable reality. Its closest Pacific ally will field a weapon it once pioneered and then abandoned. That imbalance alone may be enough to push Washington back into electromagnetic weapons development. If the US rejoins the race, it will not be running ahead of Japan, it will be running beside it. A future written in electromagnetic fire. The railgun story is not one of failure, but of evolution. The United States built the foundation, Japan solved the durability puzzle, and the geopolitical environment ensured the weapon would not fade away. As Japan moves closer to full deployment and the US weighs its return, the once mythical superweapon is quietly becoming a practical tool for modern naval warfare. The future battlefield may echo not with explosions, but with the thunderless flash of electromagnetic power ripping a projectile into the horizon faster than any gunpowder could dream. And if that future arrives, it will have been Japan, not the United States, that kept the dream alive long enough for the world to witness it. If you enjoyed diving into the rebirth of this incredible weapon and want more mind-bending stories from the front lines of emerging military technology, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. Your support helps power the next deep dive. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.